You ever stop and think about how wild it is that a self-driving car can spot a stop sign, or how your phone just knows how to find every single picture of your dog? I mean, for us, seeing, it's just something we do, right? It's effortless. But for a computer, a picture isn't a picture. It's just this giant, overwhelming grid of numbers. So the big question is, how do we get a machine to make sense of all that, to actually see what's in that grid without getting totally lost in the pixels? Well, the answer is pretty incredible. It's an architecture that's actually inspired by how our own brains work. So let's dive in and break down how AI really learned to see. All right, so here's our game plan. We're going to break this down into 5 parts. First, we'll tackle what I call the image problem. Then we'll get into the convolution solution, followed by its sidekick, the pooling power-up. After that, we'll see how to put it all together by building a layer. And finally, we'll uncover the secret assumption that ties everything together. Let's get started. Okay, section 1, the image problem. You might think the easiest way to do this would be to just feed an image pixel by pixel straight into a normal neural network, right? It seems so direct. But it turns out it's a recipe for disaster. It creates 2 absolutely massive headaches.
So that first headache? It's all about computation. Let's say you want to do something pretty simple, like just find all the vertical edges in a pretty small 280 by 320 pixel image. If you used a standard, old-school, fully connected network for that, you'd need to learn over 8 billion parameters. I mean, let that sink in. 8 billion! That's not just a little inefficient, that's a straight-up computational nightmare. It's so huge you literally couldn't train it.
And the second problem, honestly, this one might be even bigger. A standard network is completely blind to an image's structure. It has no idea that a pixel is related to the one right next to it. To the network, it's not a 2D picture. It's just one super long, flat list of numbers. It's like taking a book, shredding every word, and then trying to figure out the story. It would have to learn from scratch every single time that pixels that are close together probably belong to the same object. And that is just a ridiculously inefficient way to learn anything. So, how in the world do we fix this? Well, this brings us to section 2, the convolution solution. This is the truly brilliant technique that lets us escape that billion parameter nightmare and finally teach a network about the natural structure of an image. You can think of convolution as having 2 incredible superpowers. The first one is called parameter sharing. Now, instead of trying to learn different rules for every single pixel, we just create one tiny little feature detector. We call it a kernel. Maybe it's designed to spot a vertical edge. And then we just slide that one detector over the entire image. This one trick, it absolutely slashes the number of parameters we need. And what's really cool is that it gives us our second superpower, something called translation equivariance.
So what on earth is translation equivariance? It's actually pretty simple. It just means that if something moves in the original image, the network's internal map of that thing moves by the exact same amount. So if there's a cat in the top left corner of the picture, the cat detector part of the network lights up in its top left corner. If you move the cat to the bottom right, guess what? The cat detector lights up in the bottom right. The network's response literally follows the object around. It's predictable.
And this whole thing, this whole superpower, it all works because of one beautifully simple and powerful assumption. We're basically betting that a useful feature, like, say, the curve of an eye or the texture of a dog's fur, is going to be useful to find no matter where it shows up in the picture. An edge is an edge, right? Doesn't matter if it's on the left side or the right side.
But, it's not a perfect silver bullet. Convolution is amazing at handling things moving around, left, right, up, down. But it gets really confused by changes in scale or rotation. It doesn't automatically know what to do if an object gets bigger or smaller or turns on its side. To a simple convolutional filter, a picture of a cat sitting up and a cat lying sideways are 2 totally different things. So yeah, we're going to need another tool for that. And that brings us perfectly to section 3, the second part of our 1-2 punch, the pooling power-up. So convolution did its job, right? It created all these great maps showing us where different features are, but now we need a way to kind of summarize all that information and make the whole system a lot more robust.
Okay, the most popular way to do this is something called max pooling, and its real power is just how simple it is. So instead of holding on to every single piece of data from our feature map, we just take a small window, say a 2x2 square, and we slide it across the map. And at every single spot, we ask one super simple question. In this little neighborhood, what's the strongest response? What's the biggest number? We keep that one number, the maximum, and we just throw away the rest. See what's happening? We've stopped asking where exactly is this feature and started asking, is the feature present in this general area? It's a huge shift. And the result of all this summarizing, we get another powerful property called translation invariance. Okay, now it's really important you don't mix this up with the equivariance we talked about with convolution. They sound similar, but they're kind of opposites. Remember, equivariance means the output moves with the input. Invariance, on the other hand, means the output resists change. So if you just nudge the original image a tiny bit, the final pooled output probably won't change at all. Why? Because the strongest signal is probably still sitting inside that same little window. The network now cares that a feature's there, not exactly where. So let's really nail this down, the difference between these two big ideas. Convolution gives us invariance. Pooling gives us invariance. Here's a great way to think about it. Convolution is like a detective on the street, carefully tracking the exact location of every single footprint. Pooling is like the police chief back at the station who just wants a report saying, yep, the suspect was in this neighborhood. You need both, right? You need the fine-grained detail and the high-level summary to solve the case. And it turns out this simple act of summarizing, of pooling, it has these massive benefits down the line. First, it's a huge win for computational efficiency. The next layer in the network has way less data to chew on, so everything runs faster. Second, it's statistically more efficient, which is a fancy way of saying the network can learn better from less data. And third, and this is a big one for the real world, it actually lets our network handle images of different sizes. It becomes way more flexible. All right, so we've got our two main building blocks, convolution and pooling. Now, how do they actually fit together? Let's zoom in and look at the structure of one typical layer inside a modern convolutional neural network. It's basically a three-stage assembly line. Stage one is convolution. We run a whole bunch of different feature detectors in parallel across the input to get our feature maps. Then comes stage two, the detector stage. This part is absolutely crucial. We pass everything through a non-linear function. Now, all that really does is let the network decide which signals are actually important. It's kind of like an on-off switch for features. And finally, stage three is our pooling stage. This is where we use max pooling or something similar to summarize everything and get that nice, robust invariance we wanted. And that's it. That's the block. You just stack these three-part blocks on top of each other again and again to build these really deep, powerful networks.
Okay, let's move on to our final section. And this offers a really profound way to think about what a convolutional network actually is. We can stop thinking about it as some totally new, special kind of network, and instead see it as a regular network, but one that we forced some very, very strong beliefs onto before it even starts.
Yeah, this idea of an infinitely strong prior. It sounds super technical, right? But it's just a fancy way of saying we're forcing the network to play by our rules, no matter what. We are literally hard-coding our own assumptions about how vision works directly into the architecture of the network before it has ever seen a single pixel of data. So what are these unbreakable rules we've built in? Well, there are three big ones. First, we're telling the network, you must assume that all important interactions are local. That's our little sliding window from convolution, right? Second, we tell it, your response to features must be translationally equivariant. That comes from the parameter sharing trick in convolution. And third, we tell it, your final output should be invariant to tiny little shifts. And of course, that's the whole point of the pooling layer. See? These aren't things the network discovers. These are rules we baked in from day one. And this whole approach, it's a classic double-edged sword. It's a trade-off. When our built-in assumptions are correct, and for most image classification tasks they are, the network becomes wildly efficient. It's a huge win. But what happens when those assumptions are wrong? What if you have a task where precise location is everything, or where pixels on opposite sides of the image are deeply related? In those cases, this infinitely strong prior can actually hold the network back. It can hurt performance and stop the network from finding the real pattern in the data. Which kind of leaves us with this big, fascinating question about the future of building AI. Look, convolutional networks are a massive success story precisely because we baked our own human knowledge about vision right into their design. But what's the better path forward? Do we keep building these highly specialized models, encoding our own assumptions into them? Or is the future about building truly massive, general-purpose networks and just letting them learn everything from scratch, even if it takes way more data and time? It's something to think about.